I kind of like it here on the couch. I love Hermann Hesse, and I already know that this is going to divide you guys, all four of you guys. But I remember a train journey on the way up to Manchester from London when I picked up a copy of Paulo Coelho's Alchemist. So this was back when everyone was creaming themselves over Coelho's Alchemist, so it must have been like 2010 or something like that. And I read it front to back, all on that train journey. I didn't get it. I was so disappointed. I was like, this is so dumb. Nothing happens. And I'm genuinely curious. Did you guys think the same thing too? Many years later, I read Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha, and I was deeply, deeply moved. Not just by the book, but by Hermann Hesse himself. It's like he knows what the capital T truth of what being a human is. And it's like he sets out, like he deliberately sets out to uncover that truth, even though he knows that you can only hint at it. You can't look at it directly or write about it directly. It's an ephemeral thing. It's shimmering. It's like a mirage. That courage, that ambition, not to mention his writing style, and I'll talk more about Hermann Hesse's writing style later. I remember thinking as I finished his Siddhartha that this is what Paulo Coelho's Alchemist wanted to be. It's like professional sports versus tiddlywinks in a playground. Anyway, Narcissus and Goldmund by Hermann Hesse was on my to-be-read list. I mean, actually, everything by Hermann Hesse is on my to-be-read list, and I can't remember specifically why Narcissus and Goldmund was so high up on that list, but whatever. This is a no-spoiler review of Narcissus and Goldmund by Hermann Hesse.
Like, share, subscribe.
First of all, Hermann Hesse is a G. Just look at his face. Look at his face. There's diligence, there's erudition, there's intensity, there's conviction, there's just a hint of Aryan Nazi vibes, but just to be clear, he wasn't that at all. There's also kindness and patience and understanding and world weariness and acceptance in that face. Look at it. 1877 to 1962. Hermann Hesse was a Swiss-German, German-Swiss poet, novelist, painter. He was born into a very cultured household. His maternal grandparents were devout Protestant missionaries in India, and that's where his mother was born. His dad worked in publishing. By all accounts, he was an extremely precocious kid. However, he did have severe bouts of depression and even made an attempt on his own life when he was when he ran away from seminary school. And then he ended up in a sanatorium for a bit. The highest level of education Hermann Hesse attained was the German Gymnasium, which is like high school, but it finishes at the age of 19. So mostly he was an autodidact, and he struggled to fit in socially with his contemporaries because, well, they were all at university and he was just working jobs that he quit and got a new job and quit and got a new job because he just found them dull. But then it really does seem like, having read all of these books in the bookstore he was working at and being from a family that exposed him to culture, it really does seem like he just decided he wanted to become a writer around 1889, 1900, and then he just became one. Like, he started submitting poetry at first from the bookstore he was working in, and then his first novel was a moderate success, Peter Camerton, and after that, it was all bangers. Gertrude, Siddhartha, Steppenwolf, Narcissus and Goldmund, The Glass Bead Game, and it all culminates in the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1946. So eat that, Paulo Coelho. Narcissus and Goldmund, also published in English as Death and the Lover. What a cool title. When it was published in 1930, it was considered a literary triumph, and this was after Steppenwolf, which was a huge commercial success and is now pretty much considered a masterpiece. Told you Hermann was a G. So, Narcissus and Goldmund takes place in the Middle Ages in a monastery, and the two protagonists exemplify Nietzsche's theory that human beings are torn between two natural tendencies, the Apollonian and the Dionysian, the intellectual and the earthly. Narcissus, the intellectual, the youngest teacher in the monastery, a genius with also an unparalleled understanding of human nature. Goldmund, gold mouth, the earthly, the beautiful, beautiful boy who was sent to the monastery by his father to repent for the sins of his mother. Goldmund gets into a fight on his first day, but otherwise, generally speaking, he is an excellent student and he looks up to Narcissus. And then one day, he's like picking mushrooms or studying mushrooms in a field or something, and it's a special class because he's so clever. While he's out in the field, he gets seduced by a lady. Let's just say he discovers the joys of the body, and Goldmund falls deeply in love and he decides to run away from the monastery. The book is basically about Goldmund's travels up until one day, completely by chance, he runs into Narcissus again. The prodigal son returns, and Goldmund returns to the monastery. Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? But unlike that other book that I won't mention again, and admittedly I haven't read since, and if I did, maybe I'd have a more mature take on it, Narcissus and Goldmund dives deeply into our search for meaning in our lives through the duality represented in the titular characters. We see Goldmund thrive and then struggle and then suffer, and what gives his life meaning? Why does it feel like I'm yearning for something all the time? Why does it feel like I've lost something so fundamental to me? How do I get it back? How do I express that to other people? What is art? What is beauty? What is the point of it? And also, what is the point? So it's really profound stuff that Hermann Hesse is dealing with, right? And Hermann Hesse answers these questions almost self-referentially, because not only are his stories profound, the way in which they're written make them so. If they were written in any other way, Hermann Hesse's stories would be completely different. And so the way in which they're written, his style, is also profound in and of itself. 1. His writing's poetic, but it's not ostentatiously florid. It's very simple. As a writer, he observes things the way a poet observes the minutiae of things, except Hermann Hesse is writing narrative. It doesn't really stand out. It's almost ordinary in its beauty. 2, there is something about his sensibility. There's something about the way Hermann sees the world that comes through in his writing, his experiences, his own struggles and his own triumphs. And Hermann Hesse's, he's open and he's vulnerable and he's generous and he's welcoming the reader in, and it's so incredibly courageous. And that's what I admire most about his writing. 3, the language is rigorous and it's exact, but it's not academically or intellectually so. Again, it's just simple. It is what it is, and that's it. He's not trying to convince, he's not trying to world build or to prove or to character develop. It's just still. And half a century after his death, it still is. Let's look at his face again. Read it!
Like, share, subscribe.